Our philosophy has always been working with the community, and I think it's been mentioned for years now. Our warning ratio is much higher than the summonses, but I do agree that with speeding, it should be
It's a
more than
difficult
one.
balance, Chief.
It
Y'all
is.
do a great job, and I support Ms. Williams 100%. Um, members of council, you have any more questions for the chief?
I have one on
Wynn,
Man,
Wynn,
I
you
thought
have
there
the
was just
floor.
one.
I just want,
Ms. Wynn has the floor.
thank you. I just wanted to ask maybe an unimportant question, but it was something that kind of lit up a light bulb with me when I saw it, because it's the first time I had seen it in this area. But I've been to New Orleans, and I've been in the area where they were having a procession for a funeral. And recently I saw something very similar that was holding up traffic, but it was very well covered with the police and the sheriffs. But there was a horse-drawn carriage with a coffin in it that was being carried through town to one of the local cemeteries. And I was just surprised to see that had happened like it did. How did they get that approved?
If it's got that triangle on it, on the back, I mean,
No, it didn't.
it didn't.
Well, we work real closely with the funeral homes, and we do escorts. Unfortunately, a lot. We'll escort the family from the funeral home to the cemetery, or from their home to the funeral home. So as long as we always have a law enforcement presence, usually in front and usually behind. So we'll basically approve whatever they'd like to do.
Okay. Yeah, it was very unusual because I couldn't tell what was going on until I saw the carriage with the coffin in it. Because at first I thought it was a car show, and the reason why I thought it was because some of the preceding cars before the coffin and the carriage were, I guess you could say, hyped up. They had the big rims and
Yeah,
the
I understand.
paint jobs and the booming systems. I was like, this is a funeral? Okay. But I just wanted to know how well that went, because it was a first for me. Hopefully it lasts. But I don't have no say so over there.
But no, it went very well. We try to
I
play an
saw it
active
did.
role.
It was very peaceful.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't hear any more about it afterwards. It was just a eyebrow raiser.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Gormas.
Go ahead. I just wanted to make sure I understand the 16 noise complaints.
Yeah.
And if I understand the way the process is, citizens' complaints don't result in tickets. A policeman actually has to witness the violation.
Unless a citizen wants to see a magistrate and
Okay.
file their own charge.
Because I don't think I know I didn't know that until I had the conversation with one of you men, and I mean, because we have blatant violations at times down through town.
Yeah, noise complaints can be anything from traveling vehicles to your neighbors playing music too loud. And unfortunately, a lot of times, some of the calls we go on are not coded properly. So, as one of the reports I submitted recently, it's a roundabout number. It's close to that. It could be more, it could be a little bit less, depending on how it was coded by the dispatch staff.
I got you. I mean, we literally have a vehicle with a speaker the size of the tailgate that
We're
comes down through town.
we're
but
aware.
You can hear it from what I know. I'm very, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's just ridiculous to keep it going. But that's just my opinion.
Mr. Almond?
I don't think I'm alone.
You're not. I know who
Yeah,
you're talking about.
Mr. Almond's next.
You go ahead, Chris.
All right.
I'm just piggybacking off of that. I was going to ask the same thing. Do you know if most of those noise complaints are music or if they're trucks or loud vehicles?
I'd have to look at
Call?
each call.
Really?
Yes,
I hate
which is
that.
not that difficult, but
No.
I can do that.
Would
Look
you
at
be
each
able
call and see what the dispatcher wrote in the call for service as far as the narrative goes.
Would you mind letting us know, at least for this particular report?
Yeah, for July?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Mr. Almond?
A little more light. Are we doing the cookouts this year?
Oh, that's an easy question. We are. It's Sam, I think, has picked the third week in September. He's thinking about doing them all in the same week. So I know he wants to meet with each individual council member per ward to see if you had any specific ideas of where you'd like yours to be. I don't know if he's had a chance to do that yet, but he's working on it.
It's a great community outreach that you guys do, and love seeing it continue, so thank you.
You're welcome. We did have a nice event, National Night Out, which was the first time that all the agencies got together and did something. And this year it was in Crew. Next year we'll be in Blackstone, where we'll have a National Night Out here, be separate from our own cookouts, but where all the law enforcement agencies in the county will get together. So yeah, that was a really nice idea that I think the sheriff came up with that, and it worked through Crew this year. Worked out good.
Any other questions for Chief Kuzmiak?
I'm just
Thank you.
warming up.
Okay. Carry on.
No, thank you.
Carry on. At this time, if there's any citizens that would like to speak to the council, you may come to the podium now. Be glad to hear from you.
I have one comment.
Yes, ma'am. We'll get you to come to the podium, and if you'd be so kind, state your name and address for the record.
And I really wanted to direct this to the police chief. My name is Tyler Scott. I live at 811 Brunswick. And I don't really consider Brunswick Avenue very safe anymore. You know where my house is. I'm next door to Billy Colburn. I'd say at least half the cars and trucks speed. I almost got T-boned yesterday, the day before yesterday, by a young man who ran a stop sign. We're having a major problem with people running stop signs. I've actually seen people run 3 stop signs. So I walk Brunswick a lot, but I also walk at night because I have a dog. It is not safe, and somebody's gonna be hurt or worse, and we need help. It's amazing. And I recognize a lot of the speeders, but people just figure they can get away with it. But the stop sign, somebody's gonna be killed. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Chief Kuzmiak, I tried not to embellish, but this is what I see in my neighborhood, so.
Thank you for letting us know.
Mr. Bagley, it's good to see you again, sir.
Good afternoon again.
Leave a $20 tip for your second appearance.
All right. For future, since we were talking about sidewalks heading south, I guess this will come at the completion of Taylor Bottom sidewalks, I guess from the Williams property all the way down to the transmission place on both sides of the street. Have that issue ever been spoken about?
It has, and there's a significant investment involved in sidewalks. And Mr. Van Orbeck, you want to weigh in?
I think that the proposed plan that VDOT was agreeable to did not specifically run the sidewalks up North Main Street. It would come off of Division Street. If you're familiar with that division to High Street, if you're going that way, I think a lot of people walk from convenience stores and that sort of thing. However, Ms. Wynn and I have talked on more than one occasion about the sidewalks on North Main Street. If you knew, or if you know, the town had actually written the Chap 21 grant many, many years ago to put sidewalk on North Main Street. And I think it's a project that we can take in bite-sized pieces, but it won't be actually part of the Taylor Bottom project because I think VDOT wants to come from Division Street to High Street and directly into the neighborhood. And I think that's supposed to really.
So would that be similar situation about, well, I don't live on that side of town, so I don't know the walking traffic. Because,
That's
you know,
where your traffic walks,
Yes,
is division.
yeah,
That's definitely your walking traffic.
but I'm talking about
Which side of
one
Main Street?
side of the street versus the other side because
the-
one side is closer to
There's
the
only
properties.
sidewalk on a portion of Main Street on the east side, the side that Miss Wynn lives on. And that would be the logical place to put the sidewalk now, because then it would feed back toward Taylor Bottom or the transmission place. And I think we had that request from Ina Judah Church, that sidewalk installed there for us.
Thank you, Mr. Bagley.
It would connect to Tucker Lane that takes you back into Taylor Bottom.
What was that, excuse me?
It would connect you to Tucker Lane
Okay.
that would take you back into Taylor Bottom off of Main Street.
Anyone else like to speak to the council this evening?
It-
Hearing, I beg your pardon?
I just have a comment if you don't mind, piggybacking on what Ms. Scott said. I have seen some speeders over there. I personally don't speed. I do 25 through that neighborhood. You got, and just for Philip, there's a manhole not far from your house. And that thing is,
Oh, it's right in front of her house. It's a speed.
is it right in front of her house?
Yeah.
That thing's a speed bump on its own. I mean, you hit that thing on the, if you're in a smaller car, and you're doing even 25.
Tear up your bottom.
That's why I've never said
Don't tear
anything
up the
about it.
bottom of your car.
'Cause it.
But it is
you-
getting a little rough.
You catch that thing at 45 miles an hour,
Yeah,
you won't do it but once.
but it is getting a little rough around the outside of
The
it.
only reason I didn't get hit the other day, not for the first time, is I knew that kid was gonna run the stop sign.
Yeah.
Because they all do.
you took
So
the
I was
proper
able to
precautions.
swerve out of his way. Cause see, somebody's luck's gonna run out real soon. I mean, you said you saw some kids and a mom, and we see them at night. It's worse at night.
That was on Lunenburg between Virginia Avenue and 8th Street.
Oh, yeah.
And I rarely get fearful, but I mean, I was just praying there wasn't going to be a problem. There was an oncoming car that looked to me, they didn't have a radar gun, but it looked like they were doing what they should be doing. And in his haste to pass, he did so within 10 or 15 feet of this couple. And I was so far from my home that I would have chased him down and called the police. You know, I wouldn't have tried to stop him. I would have followed him.
I can honestly
But I couldn't.
tell-
I knew it wouldn't do me any good.
I don't mean to beat this to death, but I can honestly tell you, I've had people speed by my dog and me 2 to 3 feet away, and I got ready to jump backwards. And that's happened to me quite a bit on college. This is not good.
Well, I think the chief is going to be a little bit more aggressive over there, and I'll stay in touch with him, or either with Philip. And but I can tell you this, that I believe it was in the spring I brought this up, and it calmed down tremendously. So whatever you did back then was working. I remember you had one of your officers parked at the fire station, looking down Lunenburg. And things like that worked well, and a little hiding in the bushes on 4th and Lunenburg, that helped. So, if you will, sir, my neighborhood's giving me a ration of grief, and here's one of my favorite neighbors.
And we're
Uh-oh,
beyond the
uh-oh.
warning stage. It's dangerous.
I got the matriarch of our neighborhood now. You got to tighten up, chief.
It is, you guys see it too. It's unsafe.
I'm glad I stay off of that time of town.
And that manhole, I mean, we're never gonna be able to smooth it out because it's so far up above the road, but I think there's one side of it that's like starting to collapse a little bit, Philip, if you wanna. It's got like bumps and through
You
it.
can't miss it.
Yeah,
You can't miss
yeah.
All right, any other business to come before the council? I'm gonna call a recess for,
I have one item I wanted to bring up.
okay.
have an
Mr.
item.
Page, I'm gonna give Mr. Page the floor here in just a moment. Everybody get seated, get calmed down. Mr. Page, you have the floor.
Yeah, I apologize. I tried to intervene there. There is a resolution in the informational packet for Mr. Richard Eaton, who served on council, who recently passed away. And I think it just recognizes its service. And I know in the past we've done this for some other people, not everybody. But I was contacted by a citizen and asked about this, and I think Mr. Nash may have been too. And I think I asked Philip, and I think he asked Billy to write it. And, just out of respect for serving the community and working on council, I would ask that we adopt this resolution. I'd like to make a motion.
Okay,
we
hold
do
on just a minute. Now, in the future, when at the beginning of the meeting and I ask for any agenda items, I would prefer them to be added then. But I'm gonna let you bring this up, but I'm just saying that's what I asked for, if you had any items that you wanted to add to the agenda.
Oh, I didn't hear
First
that. I
of
apologize. I thought it was gonna be handled on the mayor's minute. I apologize.
So,
It's on page 211 in your,
members of council, you've heard Mr. Page has moved that a resolution in memoriam of the late Richard Eaton that was composed by former Mayor Colburn, that he's asked for this to be adopted. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Nash is second. Is there any discussion?
He served how many years?
4.
What about people who have served longer?
Well, I had the privilege, I'm sorry, Mr. Gormas, I had the privilege to sit next to your mother, who was a pioneer was one of the original black ladies to serve. And
I'm sitting here today.
And I don't remember how many, good gracious, was it 28 years or
28.
28 years she served, and I don't recall doing anything. The late great Jerry Wilson sat in this seat, and I believe his tenure was 52 years, if I'm not mistaken. He was a pioneer in everything he did. He spent countless hours establishing relationships with our U.S. congressmen and our U.S. senators. So that was the reason that that's my thoughts. Mr. Gorman, you have the floor.
Is there any criteria that must be met for a memoriam? I mean, I read through the document. It was involved in some recycling efforts, coordinating Dollar General's deliveries, parking, and part of wanting to preserve the armory, from what I saw with the highlights of the council activities.
Big in the Armory project, but also adopting this memoriam doesn't stop us from adopting others. We just did one in June for the gentleman who served on council back in the late '80s, early '90s, and
We did
dedicated a
not
bench.
do,
so-
we didn't have a resolution. A bench was, with a plaque on it, was, installed out here in front of town hall, you know, and, Mr. Neal was a pioneer as well, that he, you know, he fought vigorously for and got the ward system in place, and, so I think that bench was well warranted.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't recall in my 8 years on council that we've ever presented a resolution, at the passing of one of our former council members, and I've served with 4 that have passed on.
I can tell you, I didn't know Mr. Eaton. Never, I don't think I've ever met him. This was brought to my attention, and I asked Philip about it. He said he thought it was a fair request. I think there's some citizens that would like to see us, you know, recognize Mr. Eaton, his hard work with the armory and other projects that he did. It doesn't stop us from passing other resolutions, and at the end of the day, it has no effect on anything that we do or how the town runs its business.
Did his family ask for it, or did citizen ask for it?
I think the folks who worked with him on projects asked for him. He has a family member, but the family member lives in Alaska. And I think that was one reason why it's so long for the funeral to get done. Very long time. So.
Members,
I know that when Miss Thompson retired, was there something about her bridge? Was that something that we did specific to something she was passionate about?
well, we were gonna do that bridge since my first time
It
on
was there
council
before
was
she-
Yeah.
2004.
I know that. I was
That was Barbara's bridge in 2004. So
Mm-hmm.
is
it really wasn't
Bradley-
done. If she was still on council, it would have been Barbara's bridge.
I know that I didn't know Mr. Eaton personally, but for the sake of, we always talk about precedent up here, and for the sake of not starting something that can, if we do it for everybody, it'll diminish. And I'd rather recognize somebody for something that they've worked on. Is there maybe we can revisit this with a plaque or something for the armory when we start to get that project complete. And because I know that from everything that I've heard from the community, Mr. Eaton was passionate about that. And I think, in my opinion, I think that would mean more from a passion project of his. And I don't think it would
Fair
set this
compromise.
precedent to.
Yeah, I think that's a fair compromise, because, I mean, like you're saying, if you president, I mean, it's literally, I mean, no disrespect at all. I've met him once or twice, but I didn't know him. But if we do this, then, I mean, everybody that serves a term, you know what I mean? It's sad.
But not doing it is also, I mean.
But what he's talking about is like a compromise.
Right, no, and I get it, but saying, hey, we're not gonna do this means we're also not gonna do it for everybody.
Well, I think
You know what I mean?
Right.
Well,
So, I mean,
established
it
criteria.
doesn't hurt anything to do
meet.
it.
we're having this conversation. I
Yeah.
feel like, to be honest, it kind of drags Mr. Eaton's name in this. But I think ultimately all this came from was because, I know there were several people on vacation that day, and the memorial service was months after the passing. But I think that's where all this stemmed from, was the fact that there wasn't some sort of town representation at the memorial service. I even hate for us to be debating
Yeah, it's
a
weird.
past citizen and council members, whether they're worthy or not. I do like Jake's idea, yes, of the armory plaque. It feels weird debating whether or not somebody, but yes, precedence, and it's a tough.
Precedence
It's
works
not-
both ways is all I'm
it's
saying.
not exactly fair.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a gentleman who can who can't advocate or defend himself for an issue. I think that, we should stick with what we've been doing with passion projects, and that doesn't, and I will say that I don't think that means that every council member that passes that served up here deserves something. And that certainly includes myself. If I were to pass out of it, on, some tragedy, I haven't done anything to deserve that yet. But I believe, from everything I've heard from Mr. Eaton's work with the Armory, I think that would be a fair cause.
I would agree. I have no problem with the plaque. I also don't have a problem with the resolution. And precedent works both ways, is all I'm saying.
All right, any other members of council have any comments? We have a motion and a second to enter this resolution, adopt this resolution and enter it into the record. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
All right, I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Almond.
Nay.
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 Aye? Didn't we just vote on it?
I could
He
not
couldn't
determine,
tell us,
I could
yeah.
not determine the vote, so.
Nay.
Nay.
Motion fails 1 to 5.
I'd like to offer a
But again,
second
I would like
motion.
I would like to revisit this one, when the
That'd be fine.
Or
When we do grand opening or ribbon cutting or something like that, I
Well-
totally agree.
If we're gonna, that's a year away.
August next year. Should be.
Or we're in trouble with funds. Yep. You have the floor, Mr. Page.
I was just saying, we could pass that motion now, that we create a plaque to go in the armory when it opens. And,
I would like for the Armory Committee to have some input on this. Does that sound great?
I think Chris just wants to make sure we don't forget it, and I don't think our clerk will let us forget.
well, we say a lot of things are gonna get done, they don't get done, you know.
Well, at this point, you may make a motion.
Yeah. I make a motion that we order a plaque, thanking Mr. Eaton for his hard work on the armory, and that we work with the Armory Committee to make the right plaque and the right wording, and that we present it upon the grand opening of the armory.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Page has moved that the town creates a plaque and work with the Armory Committee, and have this displayed in our new armory. Then we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I agree with Jake that the Armory Committee should be a part of that decision.
I concur.
I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote, beginning with Mr. Almond.
Nay, because I'd like to hear from the Armory Committee.
Same, nay.
Nay.
Aye.
Nay.
Motion fails 2-4. Any other business to come before council? All right, we're gonna have a 3 or 4 minute recess now, and then hold on, folks. And then we're gonna come back and have a closed session. I do not have a crystal ball. I do not think it would be a lengthy discussion, but there could be some action, from council, and I don't think it's very monumental. But if you wanna hang around, everybody's ready to go now. We're not gonna be here long. But that's all I can say.
Don't believe it.
That's real nice of you.
I love you, but don't believe it. Don't believe it. You're looking at Ted and me.
Now, let's
I'm just
recess
saying.
and we'll come back. So we're now staying in recess. 3 minutes, folks.